Previously in my life, one girl, one canvas, one mathematical error, and lots of painting. Here concludes the saga of the largest mountain that inspired me. This is basically the largest painting I've ever done, and in this video I'm starting off in the halfway point because, well, my previous video covered basically half the painting, so I was like, why not just start there? So here I am, recounting the journey with you, and voicing over thoughts on yet another new hobby. Cheers. If I were to sum up my 2023 activities up to this point, it would be reading. There are very few points in my life where I've read so viciously outside of my childhood as I have the past couple weeks. It is now the 8th week of the year, and I have completed 8 books, so you do the math, because apparently I'm not good at it. Just kidding, I can do that. Anyways, I'm always scared of buying a book, like spending money on a book and not liking it. I guess I could always return it, but it feels wrong. But I went to the bookstore recently with a friend, and I bought a book I really liked, a book I didn't like as much, but this kickstarted my obsession with reading for the past couple weeks. I've been reading mostly fiction, like the trending stuff, Sally Rooney, if you know, you know. And I've been all over the booktube, as one may call it. I may not, because I am not that hip. But something I found myself craving was a variety of color and the perspective of the books I'm reading. I think because I learned so much of other people's perspectives from reading their stories, I kind of wanted to see what was out there for people with experiences and perspectives more similar to mine. And by experiences and perspectives, I mean being Asian American. I know even if we're both Asian, it's not like that immediately makes our stories exactly alike. But there is a sort of camaraderie or cultural understanding that I feel like brings a level of comfort and feeling seen that is unique. Which actually is a good segue into the latest book I finished, which is an incredibly popular book that I'm sure people have heard of, called Crying in H Mart. If you haven't heard of it, it's written by an indie pop band singer named Michelle Zauner, published in 2021. And just reading her bio gave me irrefutable evidence on how differently our adult lives had shaped up. But something Michelle and I can relate on is the feeling of always having to prove your Americanness and also your Asianness at the same time. So just depending on the situation, you're just never fully there. And I feel like that is a common theme amongst a lot of first or second generation Americans. It's interesting to navigate these worlds without constant guidance. Like, you don't really have much of a rule book to tell you you should know these things in order to be accepted fully into one culture, and this set of things to be accepted into another. I'm sure this case is not the only area this idea shows up in, but, you know, as a first, second generation kid, it absolutely shows up in your life. I think this feeling is really beautifully portrayed in one section of the book. She said, I had spent my adolescence trying to blend in with my peers in suburban America, and had come of age feeling like my belonging was something to prove. Something that was always in the hands of other people to be given, and never my own to take. To decide which side I was on, whom I was allowed to align with. I could never be of both worlds, only half in and half out, waiting to be ejected at will by someone with greater claim than me. Someone full, someone whole. For a long time I had tried to belong in America, wanted and wished for it more than anything. But in that moment, all I wanted was to be accepted as a Korean by two people who refused to claim me. Now, I know social acceptance doesn't just start and end at cultural boundaries, but what a beautiful passage, and I feel that. Another theme in this book that I wanted to address because I really related are the ways we can relate as first or second generation people back to our non-majority culture. Michelle had an aunt who she associated heavily with her memories of Korea. She stayed with her for 6 weeks while studying abroad in Seoul. And after she passes, when she goes back to the funeral, she says, "As we drove away from the city, I found myself looking back at Seoul as if it were a stranger, something else now than the idyllic utopia of my childhood. With Halmoni and Yunmoni gone, it felt like it belonged to me a little less." And it just made me think how, with the passing of my grandfathers and moving out of my parents' house, the distancing and loss make me feel even more disconnected from a culture that I grew up with and now have to consciously integrate back into my life in order to sustain a connection. I found myself lately wanting to cook more foods that I grew up eating, and even beyond that, understand what goes into traditional cooking, learn the terms, traditional Taiwanese dishes, and listen to the language every so often. This is something I never had to consciously do when I was living under my parents' roof, but now building my life as an adult, I have to consciously integrate. One of the differences between Michelle Zellner and I that I wanted to address was that Michelle is actually half Asian. Her mother's Korean, while her father grew up in the States. And I've always wondered with half Asian children how that impacts their experience, specifically in childhood. Because for me, it felt like my personal life was very isolated from my external life. There were very distinct differences, which made the worlds very easy to compartmentalize. We ate different food, we talked about different things, we even spoke in another language. Home life just felt very removed from my school life, which thematically lends itself to how I approached my life as an adult. I have my 9 to 5, then I have my side pursuits or hobbies, which I tend to keep very separate. But I always wondered if people of mixed culture home lives also have that level of compartmentalization, and I'm sure it depends on a variety of factors, like what types of cultures are you mixing, what your environment looks like, what your personality is. But yeah, just general musings, food for thought maybe. But overall, really enjoyed the book and highly recommend. In my Goodreads review, I said, in this memoir of her mother, she's vulnerable, honest, and brave in so many ways. Her story is relatable for any Asian American mixed-race children growing up and navigating cultural identities. And in the respect of finding identities, probably relatable for anyone growing up. Having fun?
See?